Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg McConnell, Director of Admissions at Bishop's College School. In my 13th year at the school, and excited today to share more about our boys ice hockey program. As many of you may know, we're a small boarding school located in Sherbrooke, Quebec. About 250 students, averaging 36 different countries in that student body makeup. And certainly, I've had a number of players from different hockey markets over the years, and excited today to walk you through not only our staffing and our philosophy and kind of how we develop our players in a very academic environment, but also as an invitation to reach out to get more information on the school and on the program. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce some of our staff, starting with Brodie Dupont. Brodie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, as Greg mentioned, my name is Brodie Dupont. This is my third year here at Bishop's College School as the Director of Hockey Operations. I'm also the head coach of the U18 varsity team. My background, I played in 17 years professionally. I had the luxury of being drafted into the NHL and had a nice career where I was able to play one game. I transitioned after my hockey career into coaching, where I coached professionally at the overseas. And I did that for a couple of years. Afterwards, looking to kind of come back to Canada, where I found Bishop's College School. I have a real drive and passion for the development side of the game. Just really trying to kind of give those kids that runway to be able to have a spot to do that. And Bishop's was a great fit for me. So we'll get more into the philosophy, as Greg said, and kind of what we value and how we run the program, as we move along. But that's a little bit about my background.
Thanks, Brodie. And now on to Jonathan Lachance.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Lachance. So I'm from Quebec City. I'm going into my 12th year here at Bishop College. Since my very beginning at BCS, I became now, since 4 years, going to my 5th year now as an NHLPA certified agent as well. Became the hockey assistant director at BCS, and obviously played hockey growing up. Had the chance to play major, junior, and college hockey as well. Division III at New England College and Norwich University. Since my very beginning at BCS, had the opportunity, obviously, to be a big part of the program, and we'll be looking forward to share more about my role.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just on that, knowing we have different things at play here today with scheduling, can you talk a little bit about your role as, obviously a certified NHL agent, and now in your 12th year at BCS, how those two things work together for the school, and maybe, I know we're going to dive deeper into some of the scheduling and things with Brodie later, but how you kind of assist with those things.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Obviously, as mentioned, the biggest thing with me is the piece of like the contact and obviously being involved in recruiting, being involved in placing kids, and making sure that we find the right kids to come to BCS, but also transition these guys to a next step. Could be junior, could be college, could be professional, could be anything. So obviously, my expertise in finding path for players and all players in the program, making sure that obviously building the schedule with the teams. Both teams has a lot of opportunity to be seen by college coaches, junior coaches. So for me, my role has been a lot on making sure that we have eyes on both teams and making sure guys get opportunity to be seen. And by the next, obviously the college coaches and all the recruiters that are out there to help them, progress to the next step. So.
Yeah, and obviously your network within the hockey world helps bring families and and eyes to the games. Now, do you work, in a typical environment? Are you on the bench? Are you, what's your day-to-day role look like with the program?
Yeah, obviously, I'm not on the bench. I actually started the first couple of years I was on the bench, but I really found my way to be better not on the bench, but more behind the scene, making sure, obviously, as I go back, building the schedule so we go to the right event to be seen by scouts and recruiters. And for me, my job is really to make sure our players and both teams be seen, and obviously like my availabilities is like to be behind the scene available for parents and other advisors trying to create obviously a market for our players, and that's the biggest thing for me, as far as so on a day-to-day basis. I am not in school on a daily basis. My job is to help admissions to recruit players. My job is to help our coaches to have the right people to see our players and really make kind of a link between families, players, advisors, and admissions, and make sure that everything connects for the best of our players, basically.
Great. And Joe, I know you've got to jump off here, but one last thing. We're talking broadly about your network, but can you talk about where you've placed players or helped place players in the past, whether that's in Canada, abroad? Are you working with many kids going that college route? What does that look like? So when we're talking network, can you just explain how big of a world that is, and certainly our program and your ties to it over the last 12 years. How do you talk about this school? How do you, in your pitch to a GM in a major junior or college coach, what's the BCS profile in your opinion?
Yeah, obviously, to this day, and keep wanting to be involved in BCS. The culture is a big thing. The player that grows into the program are players that obviously want to get better, are good people, and are learning every day. So for me, the network is like simple. We had players. I drove NHL scouts to come watch our players. I drove major junior scouts and NHL Central Scouting and major junior Central Scouting as well. So for me, there's a path, and for the program, there's a place for every kid, and that could be Division 3, Division 1. That could be NHL. We had some good years with NHL scouts coming to our games. We had NHL draft picks, but also we have a lot of pride in making sure we place kids in CCHL, Major Junior, BCHL, Alberta Hockey League, Manitoba. We feel that there's a place that kids can grow and find their way. There's a path, and my job and with the staff and the family that we help, and also the advisor that represent those guys, is to drive these opportunity to them and make sure they get opportunity after us, because the big thing with us is after us, options, and guys find their way. So we had guys in every league, basically: USHL, NAHL, NCDC, Premier. So there's a league for everyone. You just got to find the right one for the right player, and this is where my job becomes key, where I can relate to either advisor, family, the staff at BCS, and obviously help transition along, and or relate the information, or so this is where kind of we'll adjust with every kind of like the team we have every year. There's a change in team every year, and that's what we're happy when our guys are moving on, basically. So that our goal and our pride goes on our guys moving on to the next level. That's all we are, and that's all we always been. So to answer your question, Greg, about how do I, when we talk to GMs and things like that, our big thing with us at BCS is gaining confidence in ourselves as a player, and we let players play. We obviously, and Brodie will touch more on the hockey part, but like players that come to BCS, we take a lot of pride on moving them on, and honestly, it's been a great pleasure to see guys grow into Division 1 commitments or Division 3 commitments or club teams commitment as well. Guys find their ways, but they get out of BCS after with confidence, and usually we get players that have an identity as a player, whatever identity it is, and whatever level it is. So.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate it. And, it's a team approach here and certainly been a big part of that team here for quite some time. So thank you for jumping on with us and look forward to seeing you again here soon. So, Brodie, I'm just going to go over a quick overview. And this is my 13th year. So obviously with my role as director of admissions, very hands-on in from the start to finish of the admissions process. But I've had the good fortune of working alongside the hockey staff to see growth over that time. And when we look at it, we always come back to some key pillars. We want our kids to develop. We want our kids to get that exposure. And we want them to have fun. So, the style of play over the years has always been fast, skilled, fun, and that's today's hockey. But each year when we're looking at development, we're looking how we best support our players. We have to kind of regroup. And so you're seeing the hockey staff and the admissions here on the call today. But it's really a team effort as you'll hear throughout this presentation, working with all the different areas of the school. And when we come together in the spring, we're always kind of looking at things with a growth mindset. How do we get better? How do we continue to improve? How do we continue to support our students in their pursuit of excellence in academics and their pursuit of excellence, in this case with hockey? So you heard Joe talk about player promotion and how we're trying to combine, kind of that good kid who's looking for that strong academic pathway with a strong kind of opportunity to develop their hockey with time, with support, and that confidence piece, which we want to show up in the classroom, in the rink, and just in their daily interaction. So with that, Brodie, I'm going to hand it over to you just to talk a little bit about the structure. So can you run down in terms of the breakdown of the different teams, and what that looks like and why we have that structure?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, so we in our program we carry two teams at the elite level. We have a U18 and a U17. For the Americans, that could be a 16U comparable. Just the wording on it's a little bit different. So the one thing that that really kind of intrigued me about BCS and what we've been able to grow since I've arrived as well is the ability to move the rosters around and have that flexibility really to put the kids at the right level, to allow them, I know Jonathan touched on it, to allow them to develop in an environment where they can get that puck time, they can grow that confidence in game, and we can also challenge them, in a way that allows us to push the boundaries. So really, when you look at our program, it's two teams, but it's really one program. The unique thing about our, I think, hockey versus maybe some other places that our hockey staff is hockey dedicated. We're not teaching, we're not, house parenting. We're 24 hours on for the kids. So, my U17 coach is a full-time employee, as are the assistants who aid in the day-to-day practices. So with the structure of the program, that just gives us that flexibility. We get to know all our kids, on a personal level. The relationship's very important to us, and understanding kind of how that works with their academics, how that works with, their house parents and their new roommates and their new classes. I mean, there's an adjustment when you first arrive, but in general, that's sort of where we look to kind of find that as a strength in our program. We try to also bring them in at a young age. We want to find these kids a pathway a diploma. We want to commit internally. We want to look at that long runway. And from a culture perspective, it makes a lot more sense too. So we want to bring them in at that U17 level and watch them grow, graduate them to the U18. Obviously, like Jonathan said, hopefully get them drafted, hopefully get them some looks, but always provide that pathway to a diploma alongside with elite hockey.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, from a admissions and school perspective, we see great value in that earlier entry academically, right? We are a rigorous IB institution. And so when we bring a student in, say, to the ninth or 10th grade, just the curriculum gaps are going to be smaller. So Brodie touched on the cultural piece, having guys returning to the program, having a longer runway to develop. We look at the same thing on the academic side. So there's great alignment there with the two, in our opinion. And Justin, who's also on the call from the admissions department, so you would have seen both of our names on the website because we're often the ones in the rink as Brodie and his staff are on campus running the day to day. Can you bring up the sample weekly hockey schedule? So if you've been on our website, you would have seen this. And with this, really the idea of this document is to show, okay, here's the daily schedule, which we'll pull up in a moment. But in a boarding school day, there's not a lot of free time, right? The idea is there's a lot of structure there, which becomes a safety net for the students. And so when Brodie and his staff and the hockey team come together, their free time in the week is early morning. So you'll see there, we have the option for skill development in the morning. Lunchtime, we have a nice long lunch break each day. So that's time that Brodie and sometimes will meet with players, work on video, some different things. And then in the evening, you're coming out of your practice and your team lift, where you're then into study hall. You have a little bit of downtime. So this just gives everyone a good idea for what that day looks like, what the week could look like. Pretty accurate for the fall, right? As we're getting guys rolling. And Brodie, you may want to touch on some things here in a moment, but when you scroll, down that sheet and you see the staff that Brodie touched on, this is a big differentiator for us. We dedicate a lot of resources to the hockey. We have academic people that are working alongside the team to help coordinate with the players, physiotherapist, athletic therapist. And so over the years, as we talked before about, looking at how do we improve? How do we continue to support these students socially, emotionally, academically, and with the hockey? What we've learned is, we need to put these supports around the player, around the student, so that we're not adjusting our academic bar for the student. We're a very rigorous academic institution, but we're going to put the supports around the player to make sure that they can maintain that high standard. And with that, it's getting to know the players. And so Brodie and the staff do a great job day to day of evaluating body language, different things. But Brodie, just before we move on to kind of that traditional academic day schedule, just to give families a better idea, is there anything you want to touch on the document?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just kind of want to touch a little bit on, what is great about our program is the access to the ice. We virtually have priority on any free time that the kids do have. We're going to get access to that ice time. This is all going to be in a controlled environment. When we get into the on ice development and that sort of thing, we'll touch a little more in depth on that, but about controlling the intensity, controlling, that week to week, that day to day. What does the weekend look like? We'll kind of maybe have to modify that weekday practice schedule. But it's going to be a rigorous schedule. It's going to be a schedule that's going to allow the kids to develop, and we're going to develop the week in a sense that makes sense for the kids to be able to peak on the weekends when we do get them out on the showcase events, or we do get them into the league events where we're playing games. So you're looking at this, a typical week. We got ice there offered on Monday. we do have access to that. If we come in on a late Sunday, we often take that day as an off ice day, but we'll still have a recovery day. Always going to the weight room. You're going to see. We'll touch on that a little bit. We have a full-time strength and conditioning coach. There's going to be 3 supervised strength lifts a week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday they're going to have a lift, but it'll be perhaps an unsupervised lift. It's going to be a little bit of a lighter, getting ready for the weekend type of situation. And then we're going to push in typical weekend, leaving on a Friday. And then we're going to get out there for the games, 3 games on the weekend at the U18 level. Sometimes at the U17 level, there'll be 4 games on the weekend, depending on the schedule. But, it's a very, like you mentioned, rigorous schedule. We demand a lot from the athletes. And as we get into it, we also demand a lot academically. So once they get in the rhythm of it, this also creates a good routine. So that's the great part about the schedule in terms of the on ice. I won't touch too much. You can see the goalie coach there, goalie practice. We do have dedicated sessions for those guys every Tuesday morning. Then he gets out to an afternoon practice where he's going to help kind of apply those skills that they work on. We're going to have some dedicated skill time in there, so we'll get into that as we move along, but just kind of a broad look at our schedule. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
So, Justin, if you want to pull up just the academic day, just to overlap these, and you can find both of these on the website, just to have both, Justin, in the screen. So you'll see here on a typical academic day, we'll start each, 3 mornings a week with the chapel, which is an all-school meeting. But as you're kind of breaking that down, one thing to note is our cell phone policy. So with that, you're going to, students will have access to the phone in the morning. And then for your guys, Brodie, probably not until after dinner, they're grabbing their phone. But one of the ideas there as a school was engage with those around you, take full advantage of everything BCS has to offer, because when we're outside of the rink or outside of some of those team activities, this is a robust campus. We're not a hockey academy, traditional boarding school, nonprofit that's been around since 1836. So busy day, students are engaging. They certainly have access to their phone after dinner or after 4:30 once the houses reopen. But the idea is they're here, they're getting a lot more out of their day than they would if they were commuting a few hours to practice and back, or hopping on a flight. Our students are well integrated, whether they're in the hockey program or not. And then the other thing I just want to note here, you would have seen on that mock weekly hockey schedule is the flex day. So the flex schedule, still 4 periods, however, out a little earlier. So out by 12:25. The thinking there is if our team is traveling on a Friday, so oftentimes this is Fridays in the winter, it's less missed teaching time. So our academic coordinator will help with the players if they're rescheduling exams, whatever it may be. Obviously, Brodie's up to date, serves as another advisor for all the players within the program alongside the coaches. But that's the thinking. So our skiers can ski in the afternoon, and if our basketball or boys ice hockey is traveling, less missed teaching time. But if you overlap these two, you certainly get a good sense for just how busy the day is. And, with student life, lots of opportunities to go and support other teams, go and support the plays, whatever it may be. These students are going to be well integrated. So with that, going to move on.
If I may, just touch on the Thursday.
Yeah, do you want to jump in on that?
If we could just pull that back up, we got the morning practice. And that's the unique day where we got the morning and evening practice, because we are a cadet school. I believe the oldest cadet corps in Canada. So, we do take a lot of pride in that, but all our athletes, everybody in the school, it's a mandated event. They're going to go every Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30. So as Greg was saying, there's the academic piece, which is rigorous. There's the structure, which is busy for the kids, but there's also the cadets program. And so this is where we're going to practice in the morning, where you might not see the typical afternoon practice. They'll go to cadets, and then will jump on the ice right after or before in the morning.
Thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to transition just to kind of what some of those practices look like, Brodie. So can you talk about kind of daily practice, your philosophy there, and then yeah, just give it what's a typical day, what's the length of practice, things like that. So I'll hand it over to you on that.
Yeah, great. The length of practice will be, we'll have a 1 hour slot where the U18 comes down to 3:15, and so does the U17 kids, and they begin to get ready for what we would term it as their crease, but it'll be for the practice. The U18 typically jumps on from 3:35 until 4:35. Then we'll get a flood. At the same time, the U17 will be in the gym with their off-ice activities. So they'll be doing weightlifting, plyometrics, and kind of having a guided lift while the U18's on. Then we just flip that. On a Tuesday, typically on a typical week, let's say we come out of a weekend on a Sunday, and the Monday is going to be a recovery day in the gym. Our head strength and conditioning coach, Josh Bray, is going to be leading that recovery, making sure that we're getting the kids fully rejuvenated for Tuesday practice, which will be quite an intense practice. Typically, we'll be working on habits, and really kind of setting the foundation for our gameplay in terms of little things of stopping at the net, stick positioning, and we're gonna be quite hard on the kids in terms of holding them to a standard that is going to be expected that day. So. This is going to be a little bit of stopping and starting that day, stopping at the net, stick positioning, angling, crossing over, moving your feet, making sure the work ethic's at the right rate. In that, we're going to have some compete, where we're going to have some intimate competition, typically on a Tuesday. That could be at the end of practice, a couple of drills where we're going to really get them kind of in that one-on-one kind of structure, get their legs, body, and their nervous system firing. On a Wednesday, when you come back out, usually right now, in particular in the second half, where now we have a good foundation of, how we want to play, what that system looks like, we're going to certainly start dedicating more time to the skill development. So we're really going to foundational skills. We cannot overlook these edge work. We're going to separate the defensemen and the forwards, where they're going to work on position specific skills, whether it be for the forwards picking up rims or the D working on retrievals. So we're going to identify all the skills. We're going to break it down. We're going to isolate it, and then we're going to build out that practice by working on those types of skills. So there's many skills throughout the year that we touch on. We certainly get across all of them. There's no particular order. It's kind of one of those things we'll look at the game, and we're gonna make sure that we are addressing the areas that are most urgent. But in saying that, we still have the curriculum that we're gonna make sure we touch all the skills. So that could be a Wednesday. We're gonna control that intensity in terms of, it'll be a bit more of a lower intensity day, higher execution is what we'll be looking for. The Thursday practice, that's a day we're going to be looking at probably pushing the envelope with a couple shooting drills, really working on that, maybe that transition or that kind of feel good drill into maybe some odd man rushes. And then we might touch on a system just as we push into the game for the weekend, make sure we have our identity as a team put together and address any of that. But certainly that's a day where we want the blood moving. We want we want the energy high. We want to be feeling good going into the weekend. And so that's kind of the day to day on in terms of how we build out the week. With saying that, I will just preface it by we do alter it based on injuries, based on schedule. Sometimes we leave on a Thursday. That may change how we're going to run that week. But it's going to be an environment where we encourage mistakes. It's going to be an environment where we encourage, questions, and we want kids to get comfortable, essentially failing, getting out of their comfort zone, pushing themselves, and then we want to be able to correct it, and we want to get the reps in for them. So, okay, let's correct this, and now we're going to go repeat the rep, and we're going to do it the proper way, and we're going to try to really hammer in these habits. So now they're not thinking on the ice; they're playing hockey, and it's been sort of put into their toolbox, as we like to say.
So, Brodie, are you losing your voice come Wednesday, or how do you communicate on the ice with those practices? I mean, talk about the relationships there and your style.
Yeah, so I'm a very relationship-based coach. I like to consider myself a teacher. I'm here. The days of when I played and the yelling and screaming and coaching out of the fear has I kind of watched it disappear throughout my career. The big thing is the kids want to know why. Why are we doing things? So you got to be able to explain the reasons behind your drills. You got to be able to justify them. And you got to understand too that every kid's going to be at a different level, whether that be psychologically, emotionally, in terms of where they are in their development. So how you're going to challenge the kids is really going to depend a lot on how we're going to build our relationship one-on-one. Some kids maybe have to be pushed a little bit more where, you got to pull them aside. Some kids are going to have to be, encouraged a lot more. Some kids are going to have to be get a lot of one-on-one time, where you're talking to them at noon hour, you're talking to them after school. So it's going to be really the relationship-based style of leadership where we want to be transformational, right? We're not here in a transactional way, right? So that's the best part about being at BCS. Our whole purpose in here is to make sure that we're here for the athletes and the athletes aren't here for us. So this is really kind of our approach and our core philosophy when we look at how are we going to teach these kids in an environment that they can grow and feel comfortable in. So, we're firm, but we're respectful.
Well, thank you. And so talk about some of those tools. So, we're kids have more access than ever to tools that even the pros weren't using in my day. But tell me about some of the key tools that you're using to help get some of those points across, not only to the player, but making sure there's a good triangle of communication between yourself, the family, and advisor, whoever that may be, and and the player.
Sure. Well, we could talk first about, the players. One tool that's obviously become more of a great kind of part of the game is the video. As you mentioned, we don't have a ton of time with the kids, so that might be a lunch hour video, individual session. Might be 2, 3 clips, might be 7 clips. There's going to be a time in particular early on we're building out that foundation of how we want to play. We're going to do a bit of system stuff on video so they can get a visual on it. There's going to be the kids that obviously need the reps, so they're going to be on the ice feeling that. The other tool that we're going to use as we move throughout the year, we're going to send out surveys to our kids post game. Every post game, our kids receive a survey. This is going to allow us to get an insight into how they felt they played. Now, if there's a big disconnect, what that's going to do, it's going to flag us for probably a bit more of a frequent conversation. They're going to rate themselves 1 to 5 on how they felt they competed. They're going to give us, 2 to 3 habits that they felt they did well. They're going to give us 2 to 3 habits they felt like they need to improve on and they didn't do so well in that game on. And then they're going to give us what they want to do better next game. So we're going to really see, okay, are we on the same page? Are we seeing the game the same way from a coach to how the athlete's seeing it? And it's really going to make them reflect on their game. The other thing we do internally post practice is what we're going to do is we rate our kids in terms of everything's subjective, but all our coaches sit down, like we like to use the acronym ACE hockey. So we're going to look at attitude, we're going to look at how hard did they compete and how well did they execute today. Okay, and we're going to rate them 1 to 5, and it's going to leave a bit of a trail for us in terms of, hey, has his attitude been down for 3 days in a row? Kind of unusual. Well, that's going to spark us to go have a conversation with this kid, because there are at the end of the day 40 plus athletes in the program. Obviously we're trying to give everybody that individual time, and these are just going to allow us to flag us as a staff to be able to kind of start that conversation from a mental health perspective. Perhaps it's a test, perhaps they're homesick, many reasons. Perhaps they felt like they didn't play as much in that game. And we're going to have the analytics to show, listen, everybody's typically playing. Here's how it works. And once we have that conversation, it usually calms the kids down.
Now, with goal setting, I know we talked about this, but another thing I want to touch on before we get there is just your availability. So can you talk about your office space, how that works, how can players and families get in touch, and then so, we're talking a lot about the players here, but can you talk about the reporting structure, some of that goal setting?
Right.
And then just kind of that communication with parents. How do they know about games or where you're staying or traveling? So some of those details.
Right. Yeah, you're bang on. We missed the so we goal set with our kids beginning of the year. Then we sit down with every single player and we dedicate a formal time to speak to them about their goals. We're going to have the 1 year goal, we're going to have the 3 year goal, we're going to have the 5 year goal, and we're going to discuss what are the steps to get and to get those objectives checked off your list. So there's going to be some kids that are going to be dreaming very big, right? NCAA, major, junior. And then there's going to be some kids that I just want to play at the highest level. And then some of them just want to come and really see how far this can take them. So really there's going to be a variety of different goals. It's important to know what drives that athlete. So we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have a time where we're gonna sit with the athletes and discuss this. For the parents, I mean, what the parents need to understand is that we talk to our kids every day. But what we'll do is we're going to formalize a report card where this is going to be a touch point, so the parents can get some formal feedback. This will come on the heels of typically one's going to come out at Christmas and one's going to come out at the end of the year. It's also going to allow us to coordinate that along with our off-ice physical testing. So what happens now is we do our physical testing on the entry. We're going to have that all documented. We're going to basically identify the strengths and weaknesses of the kids. We're going to customize a program for each individual kid. Okay. At Christmas, before they take off, we're going to retest in terms of the macro testing, because we do micro testing every week. But the macro testing is going to come at Christmas, and then we're going to gauge those results versus the September results, right? This is going to be part of the report card. There's going to be the on-ice evaluation, where we're going to touch on different skill sets, whether that be hockey IQ, skating, passing, attitude, leadership. And then there's going to be the off-ice objective data of where, hey, this is where your son was when they arrived. Here's where they are. But the micro testing throughout the week, the tests, that will be documented internally, and that will allow us to keep a good gauge on where's the fatigue level. If everybody falls off for a couple of weeks, that's something for us to consider. Maybe the workload, right? Maybe the intensity needs to be modified for that week. So that's a good touch point for the kids with the strength and conditioning coach. But we all, at the end of the day, we always come back. We meet at the end of the day. So, sometimes my assistant coach may go speak to a player, because maybe they have fabricated that relationship where there's that comfort level. Sometimes it's me that goes to talk to that player because I have that relationship. But we're all going to come back around, and we're always going to have our kids' best interests in mind, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have strategies to how we're going to improve it. But those are a couple touch points, Greg.
But I'm a parent of, of an athlete. Phone,
Yep.
email, are you comfortable with all these? I know we
Yep.
have kids from all around the world, but would you say open door policy? What are some of your kind of philosophies there that you go over with the parents at the beginning of the year?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're not, this is not professional hockey. So the parents do need to be looped in, and hey, what's going on with the kid? We understand they're away from home. What's the message from the kid going to the parent? Is it the same message that the coach gave that athlete? So my availability, the best way to get a hold of me is always send me an email, and then I will push my schedule to make sure that we fit in a phone call, we fit in a Zoom call, a Teams meeting. So you do have access to me in that sense. A lot of those phone calls, what we won't really kind of tolerate or kind of want is, hey, my son is really complaining about he didn't play as much power play as he did the previous game. Your kid will typically know what the reasons are for that. If it becomes an issue, certainly, then where it's kind of, hey, there's something going on with my kid. I'm concerned. Hey, can I just get a general update? I know the report card's coming out in December, but he's been there for 2 months. Just want to talk about that. Perhaps we get into the later months where they want to talk about, hey, next year, or they just want to call and just kind of see how things are going. I'm open to this. This is something that we're going to be very readily available for. And I'm happy to jump on a call and at any time for obviously our European players, California players. So that is a great that's a non-issue for me. The other thing we use is an app called Team Snap. I know most parents who were probably in the minor hockey system before they came. This is a kind of a method of communicating game times that allows, well, it takes a little stress off me as a director where I don't need to send an email out, mass email every time there's a game change. We're going to flip that into TeamSnap. Hotel details are going to be in there. So we're going to Toronto. We're going to punch our hotel details in there. You want to stay at the same hotel as us. We have no issues with that. We do want the kids staying in their rooms. We do have itineraries. We do have curfews. But we do understand that, hey, you want to take your kid out for dinner, you want to stay at the hotel, you want to see your son, we're going to support that. But we do want them in the end staying with the roommates that are assigned because there is a thought process behind who they're staying with. But this is all tools that we use to make sure that we get as much communication out as efficient as possible.
Great. Thank you. Brodie, you're touching a lot, and we mentioned Josh's role and some of that micro testing, macro testing. Anything else you'd like to touch on in terms of the off ice kind of strength, whether it's in season, at a season, what that looks like?
Well, the in season, we're going to oversee you very closely. Obviously, they're going to be here with us. That continues after the hockey season. Our typical season is going to end in March. And then we're going to look at, obviously, the kids have school. They're going to be here till, most of them till June, some of them end of May. But the reality is, it doesn't just stop with our off ice strength and conditioning. So we're going to oversee them 12 months of the year. Obviously, we're also very conscious of these kids do return home for their 6 weeks. But we're going to want to have a beat on what they're doing. So we're going to provide them with the tools. We're going to give them a program. We're gonna ask questions. What do you have available? They might not be exactly what we have in our gym. So we're going to modify as best as possible to make sure you have every single tool at your disposal. That you can continue the growth that we've worked on. From a staff and a program perspective, we don't see a lot of benefit of being under our tutelage for, let's call it 46 weeks and then kind of go do your own thing for 6 weeks. So if you do return home with a trainer, we just want to liaise with them. We want to make sure we're on the same page and make sure that we're continuing that long-term pathway, that long-term development, as opposed to, what we find is, somebody may hear you got to get more explosive, and then they disregard basically everything else and they get hyper focused on that. But really at their age level, they really got to be able to be on a plan that works for the entire year, for the entire growth of the whole body. And that development part is very important.
Thank you. And rest, right? Working in some rest there in season, at a season,
Yep.
I know is huge. And so we're talking a lot about the hockey. Started talking about that kind of importance of kind of being in an academic environment, that holistic approach. So can you touch on that a little bit more in terms of what are your expectations for a player? What are some things that you deem to be important when it comes to developing the person?
Right. I mean, so let's start with the academics and then we'll get into maybe our code of conduct, which helps sort of facilitate our culture, if you will. So the academics, the biggest thing from us is, first of all, we want everyone to have success in the classroom. We expect participation when you're in the classroom. We expect you to be leaders in the classroom, and we expect you to be handing in assignments and making sure you're communicating with your teachers so they're aware of your schedule. As you know, we leave a lot on the weekend. And to help that, we've come up with the purple sheets, which is basically a document where we're going to have the kids go to all their teachers during the week. We're on a 9-day cycle, so that might be on a Tuesday because you might not see that teacher till Friday. So you got to make sure you touch all the teachers, and basically it's going to give you your homework for the weekend. What am I missing on Friday? And then they're going to come to the coaches once it's all signed by all their teachers, and then we're going to sign off on it. So there's going to be a level of accountability here for the kids to go out and make sure that they're keeping up to date with their academics, they're communicating with their teachers. As you mentioned previously, the flex day starts to help with that in the winter months. But certainly early on, this is a very important document to have to make sure that we're not falling behind, because the classroom does continue even though we leave for the weekend. We'll mandate study time on the road. It'll be supervised by the coaches. We're not there to correct. We're not there to, tutor, we're there to supervise. The teachers here, we've done a really good job of bringing the two together, and the teachers are going to be here to help support that. So we're going to try to front load that week as much as possible to be able to allow the kids to focus on hockey when they're gone. We're going to allow the kids not to have necessarily the tests on Monday, so they're sort of stressed about that test all weekend. We want to get that on a Thursday. And the teachers here have been really good to work with in terms of helping coordinate that, and so we can support our student athletes. The biggest thing I look at is going to be the effort ratings. So we got player A, he's struggling in math. The effort rating's low. He's going to go to the enrichment center during practice time to help get caught up. We're not going to let this fall behind. He's maybe struggling, so we're really going to allow the school to kind of do their thing. If it's the same player B, math course, he's struggling, effort rating's high though. Two things are going to happen. One, the school is going to help perhaps facilitate, maybe, is this the right class for you? Is this something where we can make a modification? This is more probably earlier in the year, but from our perspective, we're going to help support you with hopefully get tutors. We don't bat 1,000, but getting tutors outside of practice time, getting tutors, kind of into a time zone that works, where you can still not sacrifice your athletics and your hockey piece, but we're going to help, get that resource. We're going to help support our kids. If the IB in particular, we might get into a situation where they're feeling a lot of stress because they got some experiments coming up, or they got some assignments that are due. If they need a couple days away from the practice, we're gonna support that. So that's all part of it. So that's the big part with the academics. I mean, I don't know if you want
Can I
to.
just jump in there quickly, just to give some context there? So the effort ratings come out every about 3 weeks. So that's just engagement, right? So that's a school-wide program. And then when Brodie's talking about the enrichment center, that's a space that students can go to kind of work ahead, SAT prep, but we also have full-time learning specialists there that are working with our students. It might be subject specific. If a student has a learning difference, we can certainly help support there. But what I hope you're hearing from Brodie is that the staff is not limited to the hockey staff, right? There's no division between academics and hockey at the school. We understand that a player within the hockey program, a student, has a different day to day than a student outside of that program. Like I mentioned earlier, that does not mean we're going to lower the academic bar there, but you're seeing all the different supports, which we'll continue to touch on here, to make sure that they can achieve that academic standard. So full school approach. Brodie, can you speak to, you have concerns, you're seeing bad body language. Do you have access to the teachers? What's that support network look like outside of kind of that hockey staff?
Yeah, the access to teachers goes back and forth. Could be something, one of my players are struggling in the classroom, or kind of were, being a bit disruptive. I'll get the email. Um, you know, they'll be maybe in the house, maybe they are a little disruptive in the house. I'll get the email. And it works the other way as well. Hey, I know his player A, he was struggling in practice today. His focus kind of wasn't there. Our first approach isn't, okay, we're going to discipline this kid. Our first approach is what's going on behind the scenes. So we go back to the relationship-based leadership and the transformational style that we use here. We're going to go in and find out. Oftentimes it's going to be, coach, I had 3 tests today, and I didn't do well on one of them. Or I'm prepping. I have 2 big tests coming up. I'm a bit stressed out about it. So, it could be as something as, if they're being, perhaps I'm not getting the answer I feel, I'm gonna email the teacher. Hey, have you noticed anything changing in the classroom? Have you noticed, player A, how has his focus been? Okay. And the other thing too, sometimes I'll use, if it's a kid that becomes frustrated, or a kid that, loses confidence, quite easily, or, there's an element that, we're not sure what the answer is just yet. I might call the parent, say, hey, listen, this kid grew up with you, you parented him. What did you do when you got frustrated? Is there a pathway to give me so I can get through to him so we can get him back on track here. So we're really not only even going to leverage our staff in the entire school. I might go to the parent, because at the end of the day, we're here to help these kids grow for sure athletically in hockey, but also the holistic approach. Listen, time management, focus, right? Dedicate your time in the classroom when you're there. When you're at hockey, dedicate your time to hockey. So just really kind of being able to help them with that sort of that disposition of the focus, how to compartmentalize and be present where your feet are. That's a big element of the growth as well.
So thank you. Thanks for clarifying there. And code of conduct, that's something that you mentioned. Can you touch more on that?
Yeah, so every year at the start of the year, we're going to set the non-negotiables. So these can range. It'll be in a document, and we'll discuss it with the athletes, along with the parents. But it's going to be things of the nature that's going to keep our culture strong. It's going to keep a culture that is a culture of accountability, right? It's going to be a culture that's going to promote growth. It's going to be a culture where, we're going to allow our kids to grow in confidence because they're going to have the tools given to them, to be able to further any skills in life. What do I mean by this? If they're late for a piece on the itinerary, with no valid reason, that could equate to some missed shifts in the game. If their locker rooms are dirty, and we have our cleaning lady coming in, she can't clean because the stuff's on the floor, we're going to issue what we call a ticket. Sometimes, once they get to the third ticket, they usually need to pay that. We'll do a little skate on the ice. And really this kind of sets the tone for the start of the year, and then the kids become really independent. We create groups throughout the year. So we have these groups, they have an assignment for 2 weeks. Group A may be responsible for cleaning the room at home and on the road. Group B might be responsible for cleaning the bus when we get home from the road trip and we get to our hotels. Group C might be responsible for unloading the bus with all the extras, the stick bags, the skate sharpeners, whatever else we're bringing on, the toolboxes, any of that extra. So it keeps them engaged. It keeps that group, the accountability of that group. They're accountable to not only that group, but the rest of the team. And the idea is to avoid the tickets being issued. So this is all part of the code of conduct. Now, the real kind of, I think, obvious ones: Hockey Canada, BCS policy, zero tolerance for anything racist, any sexual harassment, anything of this nature, where you're kind of taking that extra step, a zero tolerance in our program. So something happens, we investigate it, you're found to have committed one of these acts. At that point, you'll probably be dealing with the school, in terms of, and then that's kind of a bit of kind of its own entity, but that's part of it's written down, and it's in there to give a little bit of clarity to the kids, as opposed to kind of having this broad kind of, yeah, we got a culture, just respect people. We want to give a little bit of clarity on what that looks like. Now, of course, as coaches, we're all in hockey. Some of us are, some of us aren't, maybe, but we have to have a bit of flexibility, obviously, um, in that. But this is going to offer a lot of clarity for the kids. And the best part is we have great kids in our program. These are usually all non-issues. This may happen once at the start of the year, maybe another before Christmas, and then usually we're sailing. So nothing too crazy, but certainly helps drive our culture, which is an important element to allow kids to feel comfortable to grow.
Thank you. I just want to touch on a few other things here. We're talking a lot about supports. That could be academic tutors, academic university advising, and Jonathan can assist with that, and Brodie and the staff can help on the hockey side. Physiotherapy, athletic therapist, counseling, mental health and wellness, dining services, or food, right? We take a lot of pride in our food here. We have our own dining staff, newly renovated kitchen there. Laundry, the guy's undergear is done every day. We have a laundry service at the school. House parents, that the average student has an average, 24 adults in their week. So there's lots of eyes on. There's lots of kind of character development pieces, but I hope you're hearing kind of that synergy between kind of the hockey staff, the residential staff, and the academics, because that's certainly something we work hard on. And then the facilities, we have an arena on campus. We'll use the arena over at Bishop's University or outdoor fields, so when the weather's nice, Josh does a nice job getting guys outside. So, we're very fortunate, as an institution to have all of these supports there for our staff and our students. Now let's go all the way back to the beginning. We talked about some of this with Jonathan, but we talk development, exposure, some of the day-to-day stuff. But I'd love to hear more about, what we do for exposure, the thought that goes into it. And let's start with how we create a game schedule.
Right. So I mean that's been evolving since my arrival. Obviously, with the whole there's been a lot of change in hockey. There's the opening of the NCAA. So we've essentially we've gone from a private institution kind of in that prep world to a sanctioned hockey team now, that allows us access to playing different schedules, playing different games, but most importantly, allowing us that ability to have players affiliate up and down to junior A, major junior. So when we're looking at the schedule, going back to that, what the sanctioned hockey does, we play in the CSSHL at the U18 and the U17 level, which is a nationwide league. This has really kind of planted itself out west and has now hit the eastern kind of part of the country where, we have all these local teams in Montreal, these private institutions, Ontario, in the Maritimes, and it's continuing to grow. And that league is where we play in under the Hockey Canada branch. The other thing is that we're going to take into consideration, you're looking at 24 games roughly for that schedule. We're going to look at, well, we don't just have kids from Quebec and the Maritimes. We're going to have kids from Ontario. We're going to have, as discussed, international out west. So, we're always looking to maximize the exposure for everybody. So a lot of it, the U17 is going to play in the Power Prep Hockey League, which is a US-based league. So we're going to get that exposure down in the Boston, New England area. We're going to get down to the New Hampshire area. We're going to get out perhaps to all the way to Cleveland, depending where we are in the schedule. This is going to be really kind of sat down as a staff with myself and Jonathan. We're going to discuss, okay, how has hockey changed? What benefits our team? This year we took a couple trips out to the Western provinces in Canada to access those a little bit more readily available scouts from the Manitoba Junior League all the way across to the British Columbia Junior Hockey League. We had a lot of success out there. So in terms of building the schedule, the strength is going to matter for us. Okay, the teams we play, this is very important to us. We want to make sure that we have a very strong schedule, so we're having very competitive games. The second thing is geographically, where are we going? Where is going to give our kids as a group the best opportunity to be seen by the most amount of scouts, to allow them to be able to pursue their game after BCS. So that's going to be the second thing that we're going to look at. And then the number of games. This is going to be another thing that we're going to look at. So when we're looking at really the schedule at the varsity level, we've kind of pushed that into about a 55 game schedule. The prep schedule has creeped up a bit this year, but that's typically, I want to keep that in the 47 to 50 game range, which will allow for league play. It'll allow for a showcase where we choose to go, and it will allow for practice time. As you mentioned, Greg, we're not the academy model, where we're not looking at a 70, 80 game schedule. We're looking at practice time. We're looking at rest time. We're looking at recovery. We're looking at maximizing the kids' growth. And this is all going to be taken into account when we're building our schedule. So that's real important to us. And then we get in that New England, the NEPSAC games. We're going to compete with some of those schools just south of the border. Those are always fun games to go down and play, and a different look, kind of get us outside of our norm. But we are a NEPSAC affiliated school, so we do have access to build out that schedule. So we're always looking, can we add games in the NEPSAC? Does it make sense? And so all this has moved because the shift has gone from the USHL, NCDC, Premier, CCHL for a lot of the Quebec Maritime kids. It's kind of the thought has been the QMJHL now, the major juniors, because this is opened up now. And as much as we like to promote our kids anywhere, we'll make sure we have Q scouts there now more than probably before, because this is now the pathway that, the kids aspire to go to. So we're going to make sure that we're providing the schedule that allows for the maximized exposure and strength of schedule and practice time.
Yeah, I loved your line. You manage on weekends and you coach during the week, right? In terms of having time to develop and the other thing I know that's come up is how many games a day? What's ideal if you're traveling. Can you tell me what that day may look like and uh, how you're getting there and hotels, et cetera, just to go a little more into that detail.
Yeah, sure. Well, let's work kind of from the how we leave our campus and then work it out from there. We'll travel coach buses. We'll stay at nice hotels. We've really worked hard to go to one bed per head or one head, sorry, one head per bed, my bad. So that could be two double beds in the room. That could be two double beds with a pullout. Where, when I first arrived, I think we were maybe three or four to a room. So we've worked very hard to try to get, we're asking our kids to do all these things at an elite level. We're certainly trying to do our best to provide them with the elite experience and allow them to maximize recovery when they are at the hotel. So we're going to stay in hotels that are primarily mostly we do stay a lot in Marriott's. So the quality of the hotel is always one that I say is we're quite fortunate to be able to stay in these places. And then the second thing is the schedule. So we'll leave on a Friday, perhaps for let's say a game where it's in a Boston, 4 or 5 hours away. We will typically play in that evening or that mid-afternoon. And then at the U17 level, those guys in the PPHL, we try to maximize one game a day. This is the goal for every league, for every weekend. But at the U17 level, we'll get into some tournaments, some showcase events, and sometimes in the PPHL where you're going to be looking at perhaps one day you're going to go for two games. Now, when we do build that schedule, we talk a lot with those leagues or the showcase events, maximizing the rest in between as much as possible. So that's real important. The U18 level, I think all our games virtually maybe except for 2 weekends were one game a day. This is a level now where when we're putting our kids in front of scouts, we need them performing as high as they can, and recovery is a part of that. And so it's heavy hockey, it's good hockey, it's fast hockey, both levels. So we're really trying to push away from the 5 game weekends, although as I mentioned, it may happen in a tournament and more into kind of that 3 game weekend and then maximizing it on the weekends, returning for school on Monday. And geographically, Greg, the great thing about Sherbrooke, we're kind of in the hub, right? So Montreal, 2 hours down the road, Boston, 5 hours down the road, New Hampshire, 3 hours down there. The big trips really are really the Toronto maybe trips where we're looking at 8 hours. But our kids are usually home. That's on a late night, 10 o'clock, in their beds, getting up for the next day to go to school.
Great. Yeah, it certainly helps with the exposure, right? The one game a day, someone's coming. I know you guys put a lot of thought into when you have someone coming to watch a player and how you showcase that player when you know someone's there. So the thing that we didn't touch on there is, which for boys, food. Food. What's food look like? Are you guys eating McDonald's every day? Pizza? Is it $5 and go nuts? How do you control that?
Yeah, so I mean, they're young teenage boys. They're hungry. Um, and I get a ton of support from the school, with feeding the kids and offering, when we're in the week, we're looking at pastas, we're looking at carb loading, protein loading, trying to get them as much healthy food as possible. And so a lot of it's going to be throughout the week, going to be the dining hall. When we leave on the road, it might be an Eastside Mario's getting the pasta with the protein dish. Right post game, we're going to go there and we're going to eat. There's going to be pre-game meal, sorry, where we're going to carb load and we're going to make sure we're getting, we're also going to be aware of the allergies and this, so we're gonna custom order for those kids. And the only time we're going to grab pizzas might be, we're in Toronto, played our last game of the weekend. We're gonna get on the bus, get home. We're gonna order some Domino's and off we go back to campus. So the kids eat well. We work hard as a staff. Snacks, right? So fruit. We're on the road. Sometimes, we see, okay, it's going to be a bit of an intense schedule. We're going to ask the bus driver to stop at a grocery store. We're going to load up with fruits. We're going to load up with protein bars. We're going to load up a lot of times before we leave we leave the school, our school's going to load us up with, waters, and we're going to load up with, those same snacks. Or we may ask for a little meal on the road trip, maybe a pasta salad, maybe something like that, just to help tie the kids over, because they're always eating they need calories. And so we're quite fortunate to be able to have well, I am, at least I see it this way, to have a school that supports the hockey and all our athletes, to be quite frank, to allow us to go and feed our kids the stuff that they need, because we're asking a lot from them, right? This is their fuel, and you wouldn't put unleaded fuel in a Ferrari. So we're really trying to maximize. We're teaching them nutrition. We're trying to teach them strength and conditioning. We're trying to teach them on ice technical skills, system skills, and we're demanding a lot from them. And so we feel this is very important. So that's whether we're staying in a nice hotel, we're feeding them well, we're feeding them when they're hungry. Really at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that kid's in a good situation to be able to have success in front of the scouts on the weekends when they're there.
Thank you. And I know we're starting to run a little bit long here. So team success, can you just talk about the phases? I know you mentioned earlier, everyone plays, and we try and be transparent on the front end for any student coming into the program that, they would have a space or they may not fit. But can you just talk about the flow of the year there and what that means to you?
Yeah, so we try to challenge the status quo, again, going back to the transformational type of coaching, in the sense that we're not chasing wins. Come November 30th, we're not shortening the bench down to two lines, 4D, trying to close up a game 5-on-5. Now, does this mean you get the ice sessions or ice times and it's all going to be cookie cuttered out into a perfect pie? No, that does not mean that. But what it does mean is 5-on-5. Everybody's going to play. We kind of run it in a 3-part philosophy. So the first month, for returning students and new students, we're going to roll out the bench. What does that mean? Well, we're going to do it kind of in the sense of a minor hockey, where, hey, if your line's up for the power play, you're going to go get that look on the power play. If your line's up for the penalty kill, we're going to let you get that experience. As we move forward, typically mid to end of October, we're going to move into a phase where we're going to start to allocate a little bit more, kind of figure out who our players are, what's their identity, what's going to give them the most success, and then we're gonna try to groom that where we can blossom them into that player that the scout sees in late October, and a better version of that in January, and a better version of that in March. So it doesn't mean the kid doesn't go, he goes on penalty kill, he's never going to get power play. But what it does mean is, hey, you know what? Your path forward here is going to be a skilled guy. And we're gonna allocate that strength and we're gonna put you on the power play here. Whereas another kid might be, hey, you're a kid that's gonna really your path forward is gonna be probably entry level in the junior is gonna be as a checker. We're gonna give you that opportunity at times when things are going a certain way back on the power play. You're gonna play in all situations, but you're gonna be our penalty kill guy, and we're gonna really explain to the kid why we're doing this. Why does this make sense? The game gets out of hand. We're going back. Everybody's going on the power play, when it's tilted in a favorable direction. But the reality is we're going to try to groom these kids into what looks like, their identity and build that out. The only time where we'll chase the wins, perhaps if you want to call it that, we'll be in a playoff situation. So we're going to coach a little more strategically. We firmly believe as a staff, I as well, at this point, call it 25 weeks of hockey, you're going to get 23 weeks of, everybody being able to play. There's also an element of developing, developing that mature attitude of I'm playing for the crest on the front. I'm playing for the guy next to me. So we may have had a player in and out of the power play, perhaps most of the year, but we're like, listen, for this weekend, we need you to check and we need you to block shots and we need you to not get scored on as best as possible. And you're going to do this for the team. And then we may ask another guy, hey, I know you've been playing in this position on the power play, but you're actually most successful in front of the net. Can you go do that for us? So this is really kind of a time where, this is what the next level looks like. And we're going to allow you this whole runway to be able to have the ice time and the situations 6-on-5, 4-on-4, 5-on-4, 4-on-5. Once we get the playoffs, we really want to kind of push that strategy forward a little bit. All right, we're going to look at this a little more aggressively. We're going to make sure we strategize. And that's really, again, the smallest portion of the team of the year. But I will say team success, I would say, is third on our priority list, but we don't accept it. We're a competitive program, but we don't sacrifice the development ever to chase the team success. So as we said, we don't accept it. We demand intensity, we demand compete, we demand good attitudes and execution, but we're not going to chase it. That's not who we are. And I think that's what a lot of players find attractive about our program.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to touch on a few different things here. One, the meetings that we have in January, we have an open door policy, and with the landscape now, we're trying to build trust from the admissions process out. We want the parents and the players to trust that we're doing things in their best interest. And so you talk about that, whether that's with the development, what we're trying to get across, with the exposure, because now more than ever, there are a lot of free agents. So when you're about to make that jump that Brodie referenced into major junior hockey or into college hockey, it's very important that you're prepared to be successful there and be a good self-evaluator in terms of where you're finding success and where there are some areas that you need to continue to improve to continue to make jumps in the hockey world. So I think it's appropriate now for those who may not have already jumped into the admissions process with the school to understand that in order for us to get to the hockey fit, we first have to make sure there's an academic and social fit. So that's the admissions process. The added component for the hockey is trying to evaluate on the front end if there may be a fit with our program. So majority of our players do come in through that younger team, the prep team, and work their way up. We like that time we have with the players. Not all, right? So we may have players leave major junior, leave towards different paths where there become opportunities for older players to jump in. So how do we do that? We may meet in the road. You may see us in the rink. It may be one of the staff. We'll try and get to games. We'll try and evaluate over video. For players that we know are, in the mix, typically we're seeing, high level AAA players from around the world. So those who have applied may have the opportunity to come and get a lift in with the team, spend an afternoon, get a tour of campus. We do try and limit that. So there's, because we don't want it to be disruptive for the players there on campus already with us to the practice. So we do limit that to 2 times a day, typically Tuesdays and Wednesdays, some Mondays if the team's not traveling. But we work very hard to be transparent from day one so that we can start to build that trust with the families and the player. But that on-campus visit or seeing us in the rink, we're not giving handshakes saying, "Hey, you made the team. You're on the program." We, as a traditional nonprofit boarding school, we start with the academic and social fit. If those things are there, then we work with the hockey staff to make sure we're doing a good evaluation. So we're bringing in people that we know are going to align with that code of conduct, with our philosophy around development and the priority on academics. So, with that, I think that's important to note. Something that if you have more questions, we're readily available to take those and help give you a sense of more of the details around the steps. But I think now we've touched on a lot. We're running longer into time, but I think I'd like to end, Brodie, with the question. You've touched on it some, but the CHL, the college route, which has always been a popular one for our players. How do you think we're uniquely positioned to now promote players onto that NCAA pathway?
Yeah, so what's happened now, where the kids used to come the traditional prep route, they're more or less declaring, hey, I want to go this NCAA route. That usually was a sort of a segue transition into the USHL for the kids that were good enough, perhaps in the NAHL or the CCHL, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. Every path's going to be different. What we have noticed is the direct commitments out of the prep school. There's going to be some more challenges there. These schools, I think Boston University, Boston College, these big schools are probably going to wait till these kids hit the major junior levels and USHLs, or they climb their way into some junior league. Now, we do also feel that perhaps the other divisions or conferences, the Clarksons, the RPIs, the unions, with respect to those programs, we do feel that perhaps, where they're positioned, that they're going to be looking for that diamond in the rough and trying to scoop them early. So when we go to Albany, we're going to have RPI come to watch. We're going to have Union coming to watch. So they're still going to have eyes on them. There may not be that direct commitment, but they're going to be more probably eager to perhaps meet with that kid at a prep school, at least kind of start to touch base so they can start that foundation. But so that's shifted with the QMJHL and all the major junior leagues, OHL, WHL opening up. So that's going to be obviously something to take into consideration. Now our relationship has strengthened with the major junior teams, in terms of what they want, and what they want to see. So we've seen more major junior scouts attending a lot of our program games. And the junior levels with the CCHL and perhaps the Maritime Hockey League and the NCDC and the Premier and the USHL, those have been still on the regular. Those teams are actively looking and for players maybe looking to take that next step. And it's not always making that step at 16. And this is something that we really try to emphasize with our players. Those are the exceptions. Okay, for the majority of the kids coming through hockey, these teams are going to be patient. The development window is now, it's expanded. So now it's not a sprint, it's more of a marathon. And really positioning the kids to put them in a situation that makes sense is always going to prioritize, and it should prioritize the athlete and the family. These are things to consider, right? So that's kind of how the whole kind of hockey has had a seismic shift, where NCAA has become the best amateur league in the world, and there's everybody's kind of felt it. So now we're getting scouted more because the Q teams want us and the OHL teams want us. So that's where the big shift happened. And like I said, the commitments. I mean, with respect, we've had, I think, 4 commitments the last 2 years. The feedback is that those are just, I think, going to become more challenging, but not impossible.
Yeah, and I think our location,
Our location, yep.
our ability this year with players being a Hockey Canada sanctioned institution. So can you talk about what that looks like going up and down,
Yeah,
and the benefit for those Q teams with our location and programming?
sure. I mean, we're in Sherbrooke. We have a local QMJHL team in town. So we'll touch on the first part with the kids going up and down. We had over our Christmas break, we had 4 kids get called up to their QMJHL teams. We support that. We had a kid early in the year, certainly go up and played some regular season games then as well. We're not going to hold the kids back, but it's just easy you have the Sherbrooke, you have Victoriaville, you have, you know, teams in Montreal, Armada. I mean, there's teams that are all within, you know, a 3 to 5 hour range where it's easy access. Let's say, and even the ones that are farther, you're not that far. They travel here for games, so they understand the Val d'Or might be 8 hours away. We can still make that arrangement. So that's super important. The other unique thing about being in Sherbrooke, that's unique. We leverage our network. You know, we haven't, you know, in the past, or we haven't this year had anyone, but in the past, we leverage our network. So what do I mean by that? We have a coach coming up from NCAA, and they're going to come watch. They got the plan to watch Drummondville and Sherbrooke on the weekend. Hey, you're in town. Why don't you come watch a practice? You know, so it really kind of opens up that ability because they're not going necessarily anything beyond an extra to come swing by Bishop's College School. And because we have that relationship and that broad network, we can sort of have that influence, say, come on by, watch a practice, and just check it out. So, you know, there's all sorts of benefits geographically, whether it be travel, scouts, you know, close proximity competition. It's teams that are close in the queue. We're very lucky in that sense.
Yeah, lucky we've had players go on and have success and help promote the program with what type of people they are and what they've been able to do on the ice. So we've got a long history with having our players in these different leagues have success, and certainly the NCAA path is aligns with, you know, our education, you know, and hockey philosophy, helping kids with time management, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I know this has been a longer video, so if you've stayed with us the whole time, thank you so much. It's very important for us that we're transparent on the front end with what we do, because Brodie and his staff do a wonderful job day to day with the students, and we look forward to meeting you all, hopefully here in person. But I'll bid you adieu for now, and look forward to talking more with you soon. Thanks.
Greg, just before we sign off, sorry, I just like you to touch on the grade 12 element with the NCAA.
Yeah, so with the grade 12, you know, for us in Quebec, you know, we're uniquely positioned with the Canadian accredited 12th grade program, obviously combined with the IB. We're working hard to make sure we're meeting all the NCAA requirements. So we're checking off those boxes for families. Getting families and students through the admissions process, especially in the US with these private institutions. We're building authentic profiles for these student athletes, so that when their file does come up on the hockey side, they're well supported and they're well positioned to get through the admissions process at some of the best universities in the world. So, you know, we've talked a lot today about the hockey. I think our reputation as a school, as an institution, you know, having been around since 1836 with the history and the alumni that have paved the way for our current and future students. You know, we're going to make sure that students are well positioned to have success at the next level and be prepared for any course load and time management issues that they're going to face at that NCAA level. So lots there. We look at each student individually and making sure the academic fit is there, social fit. And like Brodie talked about, you know, we're developing confidence. We're going to try and meet the student where they're at, and then work their way up to make sure that they can take on any challenge they want to in the classroom, in the rink, or you know, in their day-to-day life. So lots there, but I'll leave it at that. They're well supported on the university process beyond the hockey, and it all starts with the academics, and we build from there. So thank you all. Appreciate the time, and we're here if you have further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.